Doug Shipman with us, Mr. Dozier and Mr. Westmoreland are with us. Others will be coming in and out this afternoon. We're going to start off with Enterprise Assets Management. Then at 2 o'clock, it'll be Citizens Review Board. And then we will close out today's hearings with Law, beginning at 3. So, Dean, we have your handout, so thank you. If y'all are ready, introduce yourselves and take it away, please.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Mr. President, Council Chair, and other distinguished members of the Council. Appreciate the time today to present you guys our FY2026 budget. My name is Chris Davis, the Commissioner for the Department of Enterprise Assets Management. And to my right, I have the Director of Real Estate, Mr. Cheryl Glenn-Shook. And further on my right, I have the Director of Technical Services, Mr. Maurice Jackson. To my left, I have the Assistant Director, Cedar Watkins, who's also my budget expert. Further to the left is Mr. Mark Harticrow, who is the PMO for the Moving Atlanta Forward projects. And to further my left is Mr. Billy Russell, who is the Director of Operations. So we're here today to present the FY26 budget, and so I want to go through that, and once we get done, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. So the next page actually reflects just our high-level org structure, and you can see the 4 different divisions that we have there. With capital projects include both technical services as well as the PMO position for Moving Atlanta Forward. Under each one of the categories, we just kind of highlight to particular some of the critical services that each one of the divisions kind of provide overall to the city and the citizens of Atlanta. Next page. So this is our vision statement to provide a safe, efficient, and sustainable facility for to enhance the experience of our constituents, employees, and our guests. I won't read through all of it, but the idea here is that we want to be able to make our facilities as amenable and accessible for all of our citizens and staff. And so when they walk into the facility, they see a regular clean facility where the air quality control and all those issues are really operating at its peak efficiency. Some of the missions that we have just identify some of the particular pieces that we break it down to deal with our assets management control piece and what it is that we do. Again, I won't go through all of those. You can read kind of through those. The strategic priorities as it relates to service, execution, and accountability. And for us, that means see something, say something, and do something. Next page, please. So these are just some of the deemed initiatives. It is our goal to achieve ISO 55000 certification, and that's just a standard of operation for all of our facilities to show some consistency throughout what it is that we do within the City of Atlanta buildings, the level of efficiencies, the energy conservation piece, the service level abilities, and all of those things that impact what we do. Some of the things that we deal with is the integrated smart technology, which is our EBI, enterprise building integrator, which actually is our front-end BMS system, which gives us eyesight from a control perspective on a majority of our facilities right now. That helps us with our personnel side to be able to send staff, particularly to locations that actually we can see what the issues are. So I can get foresight, just like in this room here, with the new renovations that we did, all of these 16 units, the Director of Operations can pull this room up, and he can tell you which unit is working, which unit is not working, and what's going on with that unit. And what that does for us is that it allows us to be able to send a staff member to the location with a specific service request, versus in the past we have to come up here, evaluate to figure out what's going on, and then we go back and get the parts. So it's a time saver, but it also gives us a specific focus upon what the challenges and what the needs may be. Our enhanced access management piece, we have implemented our Maximo system, which is our work order control piece. It helps us to be able to identify some of the work order tickets that we do. It also creates an opportunity for us to be able to do PM setting, so we can schedule PMs throughout the year. Just gives us an annual report where we can report out the things that we've done, and we can capture those pieces, and also gives us an early alert when the PM is scheduled, and so we can kind of get prepared to do that. So that's something that we've implemented last year, and that's we're going to continue to see a lot more of that. We're bringing in online new facilities and things like that. Life safety standards, we're enhancing or increasing our PM schedules upon our generator systems as well as the security pieces, and you'll see some of that throughout the budget as well. Next slide, please. One of the things here just wanted to kind of highlight was some of the things that we are actually completing that we've been working on in FY2024 budget. One Safe City, you can see that we completed designs for Fire Station 25, 31, and Zone 4. This is part of the Moving Atlanta Forward program. We did groundbreaking for 2 facilities this year. That was Fire Station 26 and Fire Station 30. We initiated design for the EMS Fire Station, number yet to be determined, and the 911 center, the new 911 center out at the public safety training location. Construction complete on Fire Station 22, and we continue to do essential facility repairs. And we also, one of the projects that we've been working on for a few years, and we actually started that this year, and that's the program to start putting the courts on the grid, the Georgia Power Grid. That's been an ongoing issue from time to time. So that project is actually kicked off this year, and that should be completed sometime late summer, early fall. The active build, a city built for the future, did the renovation in the West End, DOP, HR, 818 Pilot, Old Council Chamber facility that we're in now. We continue to work on our EBI, and so we're in phase 4, which is going to, again, enhance and add additional facilities into the area. One of the things that's going to be impacted in this last phase is the area where the council member sits, as well as the second floor in the atrium side. You guys are still operating on the old pneumatic system, and so we're going to be changing it out to the new DDC, which will give you the individual controls that you have into your individual area. So we get much better heating and cooling control that's going to take place in that. And so that should be completed by mid FY26, but that is in progress now. But the equipment and stuff has been ordered, so once that comes in, we'll be able to sit down and provide you guys with a schedule on that. The one other thing that we've been doing and highlighting is our EV charging systems. As required by the city in the program right now, for every time we build a new facility, 20% of the parking has to be EV chargers. We were required to do those for future use, but right now we're actually installing the chargers as they go. We also did a work with sustainability and installed 20 new EV chargers in the government center parking deck. That was completed this year as well. An effective and ethical government, again, our Maximo system is going to be a lot more streamlined and help us to be able to process and to track the type of work activities that we do on a regular basis. Again, it also helps us to be able to put things into order. So that'll continue to work along that line, as well as our ground lease operations. We are actually revisiting how we view that and what that looked like as relates to being more effective with our ground lease properties that we have. And a city of opportunities for all, generated, so what we've done is that we've generated approximately $4.5 in revenue based upon some of our lease agreements. We've been working with ATO DOT on some of their projects for some of the easements and things that they're required to do. The co-managing that piece means that we are actually have been coordinating with them. We've trained their staff upon certain things that they need to do. They go out and provide the legwork. They bring back the forms. We review them and sign off on them, and that has tremendously helped with reducing the backlog and being able to bottleneck within the operation. So that's been very successful working with them on that as well. Also have just started some initial pieces working with the municipal market and working with them on some of the much needed repairs based upon the budget. And so those activities have also started and kicking in this particular year as well. So next page, please. So we look ahead, again, we just make reference to some of the Moving Land Forward projects. We should complete construction, Fire Station 26 and 30 in the upcoming year. We should also see groundbreaking and start of construction for EMS 29, 911, Zone 4, Fire Station 25, and Fire Station 31. Then we continue with our upgrades to security system, fire alarm panels, upgrade to the public safety headquarters intercom system, and our elevator modernization project should kick off as well. A city built for the future, again, renovation in progress for the finance restack. We complete the EBI phase 4 and 5 installation and continue to support the solar system initiatives. What we're doing now is that we are installing solar panels on all of our new facilities. We are doing that in-house now versus using an outside source to do that. And like I said, again, we should complete the power installation this year for the municipal courts. City Opportunity for All, Cafe 55, the new solicitation, we're still working with DOP to kind of create and get some energy going there. We also have started to design and look at the lactation rooms for our facilities just to make sure that we have some accountability for that. And continue on with our capital projects. Effective and ethical government. Again, our assets management. We continue with that because that's an ongoing piece of it. And each time we bring on a project, we continue to do those pieces. Complete the 143 Alabama Street sale and those things we've been working on for a bit. Continue with the digitizing of all city-owned property documents that we have now, and so we try to just have a better storage system and take those off of just the hard copies that we have now. And same thing with the, again, continue working with ATO, DOT on the different property acquisition and easements that they're required to do, with the SOPs and things like that. So we started to do some in-house SOPs for certain practices that we've done, and we're making some changes along that line. So we wanted to capture those so that we make sure that we're documenting those pieces of it and becomes the standard for the department. Next slide, please. So this is just our general funds and for our FTE. This is report again was pulled as it states here in February, showing 90 positions filled. We have 66 vacancies for a total of 156 positions. We initially started out with a phase 1 of critical positions that we was funded for this past year. We actually have completed those. We've hired all 15. Phase 2, we are posting positions now, but we actually also wanted to go back and revisit to make sure that the staffing that we brought on at this particular point would be in alignment with some of the things that we wanted to do as it relates to bringing work as much as we could back in-house. And so we wanted to see what that looks like. And so we are getting applications to some degree, but the level of competency that we are seeing in the application process are not really the type that is going to help us to do that. So we continue to work with HR on different recruiting pieces to see if there are some other components where we can go to some open house and some other things to try to see what the talent pool looks like. Next slide. So this is our overall budget for the year. As you can see what our actuals were in FY24, the adopted budget for FY25, the projections to complete FY25, and the proposed budget for FY26. So the numbers actually are kind of in alignment with the way that we've been trending for the last year and a half. So we feel very good about the numbers that we have here. Some of the increases that you've seen in certain line items as it relates to the supplies, which is typically our Georgia Power, our utility piece. We've seen an increase in the Georgia Power rates, and so that's one of the reasons for the adjustments there that's continue to have an impact with that. So outside of that, what we're seeing is that the trend is kind of working the way that we anticipated. So next slide. So that's the end of the presentation. So we're open for questions and answers and anything that you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Dozier.
Hello. There you go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's so good to see you once again, Commissioner Davis. Two questions. I know that's what we get, but I'm just stating that out loud. The first one is just kind of tugging on the thread we talked about yesterday as far as a lot of decisions happening in Washington, D.C. are trickling down to the city of Atlanta. I'm curious, as we are bracing ourselves for potential austerity and trying to find additional opportunities for revenue, I'm curious if Dean has looked at the potential for sale leasebacks for city properties that are underutilized as a potential short-term revenue opportunity, recognizing we might eventually, potentially, I'm guarding my language a little bit because I don't want to put that in the universe, but there might be some revenue constraints with some of the recessionary impacts that we can potentially expect at the end of the year. So I don't know if that's part of the revenue strategy that the department is looking at, but just wanted to get your reaction to that.
So we do kind of evaluate property that we have and whether or not it's actually something that would be good. But that's just something that we just kind of do in house in case the questions come up. One of the things that we have started to look at, as I mentioned before, is we want to review and revisit our ground lease process. We really wanted to try to maximize the application to that. In some cases, you do a ground lease, you look at just the ground property itself. And what we are starting to see is that in some of our ground leases is what's happening once we do a ground lease. And all of a sudden now the business or the entity that's taken over that, they're turning it into some type of a profit for them. And so we want to revisit that to see if there are some opportunities that we can go back and revisit how we do our ground leases. And so that's just one of the things that we kind of looking at to see what synergy that we can create from that. And so those are the things that so most of the ones that are coming up for review, whether it be a tower ground lease or a property ground, we're just looking to see what opportunities that we can to look at that a little bit different to see if we can do some additional revenue generating for the city.
And then beyond ground lease or leaseback sort of strategizing, are there any considerations about outright sales of city properties to increase revenues?
So what we do there is that we try to keep, we haven't looked at it for resale. Now what we'll do is evaluate the use of the space and whether or not it's something that becomes an opportunity that's afforded for the city as a whole. And so we'll pull that information, we'll kind of keep tabs upon what the property around may be doing, may be generating. And so if that comes up in conversation, then we are prepared to be able to have a conversation based upon some of the praises that we are doing just to see what that look like.
Thank you. And then my other question, it was great seeing you at top basketball a couple months ago. During that experience, I get a chance to visit a lot of different city facilities, and I have two little ones. My youngest is 1.5. And I know a lot of our city facilities don't always have changing stations and ability for young parents such as myself to be able to navigate, especially in the men's bathrooms. I know my colleague, Councilman Winston, we adopted legislation that he introduced a couple of years ago, a resolution asking for the city to look at installing more of those sorts of amenities in city facilities and city bathrooms. Separately, I know my colleague, Councilman Bakhtiari, introduced and we adopted legislation earlier this year around feminine hygiene products, accessibility for that in city facilities as well. And I was curious if this budget or with the future sort of look ahead that y'all are putting together, if that accounts for those requests from council. I know that costs money to put those in labor and things like that and costs associated with that. But I know as we think about, the City for All making sure we're as accessible as possible. And so can you give any insight on what's going on with that?
Sure. So when that legislation piece came up, we did reach out to all of the different departments within the city, including aviation and everybody, just to kind of get just a head count potentially for what they look like. We've also have come up with a couple of different type of proposals as relates to, because of the budget piece, whether or not we do all of the restroom facilities, or we would do like the gender neutral within each facility, which allows everybody to be able to use those. So you're trying to at least, again, meet that demand, but you're also trying to have it within a budget that's manageable. So we have been doing it. So those talks are still going on today. One of the other things that we've done, when we do, of course, new construction, we always put those in there. So moving forward, that's not an issue for us. When we're doing major renovations, we are actually going there to look at that, and we'll do those type of things as well. So we are looking at an upgrade that we looking at started to do with City Hall, for example, and a few of the other facilities. But with City Hall, we're looking at some of the upgrades and the renovation that we need to do to the existing restrooms. And so those are good times where we can add those type of components to that gets covered within the budget versus becoming a hit the city in a different way.
Thank you so much. Mr. Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Wan.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Sorry I was late for it, but question for you. I appreciate seeing the FY25 projected and FY26 budget. They're pretty flat. So I'm presuming that really just represents what you see as steady state operations for maintaining the city's assets. Are you anticipating any sort of additional World Cup or FIFA prep? I mean, are there facilities that we have that might get used for those activities? I'm thinking City Hall atrium tends to be an event space for some. Is there any more incremental activity associated or preparation that we should think about in advance of next year's events? So
to answer the question, yes, we do think about that, you know, and for the people and everything else, if anything I can push and say no to, we will. But to your point, yes, we are looking at what that would look like, and the idea behind some of that, like I said again, is because it is a scheduled piece and we have those type of events that are taking place. Because typically those type of events, if they are after hours and things like that, those are paid events. Mm-hmm. And so we're able to kind of offset whatever the cost may be. And so we're revisiting that to make sure that we actually are capturing all of the costs associated with that. And so if that does become one of the options, that would be one of the means that we would be able to offset that cost.
Yeah, again, just thinking ahead or anticipating which one of our facilities, rec centers, the atrium might get used, rather than having to do emergency overtime type activities, getting them ready, then you just start budgeting that in. My other question has to do with Renew Atlanta and moving Atlanta forward, outstanding projects that are in your shop. Anything of significance, I don't know specifically, but you know, I know that's in a capital budget item, but is there anything of note there, under budget, over budget?
Yeah, two things. So one, the Renew Atlanta piece, on the vertical side, we completed all
Good.
of that. Okay.
Thank you.
So the only thing that we're looking at now is to move Atlanta forward projects. And so I kind of reported out. So the good news for us is that all of our projects have started. And so we have two right now that are in, that we're in the design phase. Everything else, we are actually in permitting right now, and then the other ones we are actually in construction. So those are tracking there outside of the council member district funds. Mm-hmm. And so those we don't necessarily plan activities, but we do manage those accounts when you guys make donations or things like that. And so we've been managing that piece of it. And so we'll continue to do that.
And financially, the funds for the projects come in the capital budget items, right? But the project management of your staff would show up in here, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, but it's good news that like you said, Renew's done, moving Atlanta forward, everything has started, so we shouldn't necessarily need to see an additional investment to help you get those through.
So yes and no, because we hire PMs out of our budget, and I've had one to actually to leave us, as he says, sadly, and go work for Georgia Power. So it can't compete with them. So we will have to backfill those type of positions. But at this point, we are still covering and we are capturing. So we also have an opportunity within the Moving Atlanta Forward. So if we run tight on those, and we actually can utilize that to kind of make up the difference.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Excellent report. And thank you for the great work that your team does.
Thank you.
President Shipman.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. On page 6, you talked about that DEEM has now taken the solar installations. Can you just talk a little bit about the decision to move from an external provider to managing that internally?
So, so kind of initially, so when we did on Zone 3, we did the solar panel as part of the design. And so, and then when we were kind of moving in between the other projects, the conversation came up with the use of a third party who would do the install and of course at no cost, and then there was an agreement, et cetera. And so what we're doing is that we haven't seen, and because I haven't done a real detailed study upon that, but the cost for us actually to install those as part of the project is the minimal cost. And so by us doing that and then maintaining it in-house, whatever, because we do pay a fee for the use of the solar that we're getting. And so instead of paying that fee, we actually can do that for the small fee and actually bring those services in-house. So we'll get all of the rebates and everything else along that line, and we can capture that. And so because it is being done in-house with these design projects, the cost becomes a very minimal cost at that point.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then in the bottom left, there's a note here about co-managing transportation projects, including MARTA 15 parcels. Can you just talk about what those projects are?
Cheryl Glenn Snooks, Director of Real Estate. The MARTA projects are dealing with the Summerhill BRT project and the Cleveland Avenue ART projects.
Gotcha. Thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I've got a couple. So I want to make sure I understand your filled versus vacancies. So are all these vacant positions fully funded?
So, so some of those positions we actually had put in, but they, in working with finance and HR, we were actually kind of identifying a potential group of folks that we were anticipating the startup of public safety training headquarters. But what we realize now is that we wanted to back off of those. So some of those positions we actually demolished with the exception of the phase 1 and phase 2 critical pieces. And so we wanted to revisit that and then to come back and ask for those positions as they come about. So we don't have the full 156 on the docs, but those were a request that we had put in, anticipating filling those positions for that reason.
Okay, and then you recently hired
15.
or are, so 15. So is that part of the 90 or should that be 66 minus 15?
It's actually be 66 minus part of it.
Okay. Okay, so there's about to be a change in ownership at 72, and then are your responsibilities going to change with that or remain the same?
No, so what we would do with that, because our responsibility on there was very minimum when they were the only leasers in the space. When I have a facility like that, then I have the leaseor actually become totally responsible for all of the costs associated with that. So we had very little cost as related to that. What our responsibility was at that time was just to kind of do inspections and things like that to make sure the facility was being kept up. But now that with the transition of that, then they would have complete ownership of that piece of it.
Okay. So I know years ago, the feds did an ADA audit. This was a while ago, quite a while ago. And they came up with a long laundry list of things that had to be fixed. And we were I guess, in wherever the equivalent of a consent order was to get those fixed. So how did that turn out? Are we still churning through those? Have all those problems been remediated?
So and I can give you some specific answers and let Mr. Jackson, but majority of those, of course, were horizontal and related to external things like that. So the ones that we had within the facilities, we continue to address those accessibility issues in our facilities. Particularly, there's some that we've actually went out and done specifically for that. And I know that some of those issues came up as relates to some of the different facilities that we had outside of our typical public use facilities. So we have addressed a number of those pieces along those lines where they were identified.
Are we out from under?
So what percentage you say that we still on as relates to the ADA piece?
Maurice Jackson, Director of Technical Services.
Keep talking, they'll pick you up. But speak into the mic if you're.
Yeah, Maurice Jackson, Director of Technical Services. We've, like Commissioner said, we addressed a lot of those issues. Percentage-wise, I would say, based on the numbers, about 75% of that was.
Well, are y'all still reporting to somebody who's in charge of checking off the boxes?
Yeah, so we do reports. So as we make repairs, and we're making repairs as we go in, and in some cases there's things that were not necessarily identified within the report, but we still address those pieces as they come about. But we keep track of what those are, and we have started communicating with the city ADA person who was actually just taking over, overseeing all of those type of activities.
All right. Now, as I recall, there were a lot of problems. Some appurtenance was literally a half-inch too tall or a half-inch too short. Was any of that negotiable, or is that just fix it?
So they are negotiable because there is a tolerance, and then if they slightly over the top, so if you got a half-inch variance and we had say 3/4 of an inch, then we could actually ask for a variance in those particular cases, because in some situations those are not that tight. So those with the dimensions that they have are ideal type of heights up in there, but there are times when you actually can ask for a variance and be able to address that.
Okay, so we're in this chamber now because of unforeseen problems that cropped up in our regular chamber. And anyone who's been through a home renovation understands that kind of all bets are off when you get going. And I understand there were not one but 2 water leaks in chambers. One you can see, and one's hidden. Should the one that's visible, perhaps, should that have been caught by somebody?
It should have been. Yeah, I can't. Yeah. So to answer your question, it should have been caught.
Okay. Well, I appreciate all the work that's going on in there, and can't wait to get back. Okay, let me ask about something I ask about every year, and that's the automated toilets. You know, and I know that there's interest from the outside to establish more of those. Do we still have just the 3?
So we have a total of 5, right?
Yeah.
So we have a total of 5, and we're still maintaining those.
Okay, any plans for expansion?
No, we have. I mean, you're right. We did talk about that before, but we don't have any plans right now at this point. But we are open to, you know, where there's a need, we can kind of look into what that looks like.
So we've had them a long time now, and what have you seen with those? Do they work? Do they require a lot of maintenance?
So with the agreements that we have, they actually go out and they maintain them on a regular basis. So we're not seeing a lot of additional costs as relates to the upkeep and maintenance, because that's kind of built into the cost that we pay on an annual basis. What we do, we can and we have received reports whereas there are some of those units that are actually very, very high use, and so they seem to be really effective in those areas. Some of those are getting as much. but we don't have the same challenges as we once did because because we did end up doing an upgrade with the company that actually manages those, and so they've been making some upgrades to the units because some of the original warrants actually were outdated, and so they have done some things internally to be able to improve the efficiencies of those systems.
As Mr. Juan has noted, you know, your budget is indeed pretty straightforward. I'll close by putting on my parochial hat and asking you how the new relocated fire station is coming along. I hear we may be having some problems with our sister organization called MARTA.
So right now, you know, as I share with the team, with Martin and everyone else, they'll continue to doing the things that they've shared with us has been an issue. So they've gotten the approval, the verbal approval, so to speak, from the communities and communities and stuff like that. So we're not having issues there. There's been a few things that Martin has brought up as relates to some things that they're trying to iron out within their internal agreement. And depending upon what the outcomes of those, there may be some additional costs that they may expect the city to be able to cover for them.
Well, would that include maybe X number of years past landscaping and other kind of routine maintenance?
That was one of the things that kind of came up. And so a conversation with them is that I'm not sure how you would really do that, because I know that typically if I'm going to provide as a company, if I'm going to provide a free service as a company, I'm going to get some tax benefit or something over the years, so I wouldn't expect to go back, you know, and maybe if it's whatever's opening this year, we may look at what's happening during this particular year.
So that's still under discussion.
That's still under discussion, but right now that's on the Martin side. So they just shared it with us as an FYI that there may be something, but they're still trying to work that out.
Right now, that's an in-house discussion they're having.
Correct.
Okay. Probably someone needs to tell them that if that becomes a problem that gets dumped in our lap, that they would be violating our aggressive panhandling laws. I don't have anything else.
Anything I can use?
I know who to go talk to over there. Our former colleague. Does anyone have anything else? All right. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you.
I take it Citizen Review Board is not ready. That being the case, we'll be back here in 22 minutes. We are in recess until then. Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is 2 o'clock, and we're going to resume this Atlanta City Council's review of the mayor's proposed FY26 budget. And our presenter right now is the Atlanta Citizen Review Board. So if y'all are, and thank you for getting this to us timely. We appreciate that. And so if you're ready, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Council Member Shook. Lee Reed, good afternoon. Executive Director of the Atlanta Citizen Review Board, here to present our proposed FY26 budget. If you look at slide 2, looking at the past year, we accomplished several things related to the city's vision of one safe city. We received and processed 219 complaints through our intake, assigned 116 complaint investigations, and APD agreed with 75% of the ACRB sustained allegation findings, and APD imposed discipline on 76% of the sustained findings. Going into FY26, we're hopeful and looking forward to the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the ACRB and the APD, additional investigative staff, and kicking off our annual community survey. On this next slide, you see our organizational chart that reflects our proposed FY26 budget. The dark blue boxes represent the field FTEs that we currently have. So there's 9 of those, and also including the office manager, which is starts out dark blue and then goes to a teal color, is a reclass, but is currently on staff. If you look at the white boxes, there's 7 vacancies, unfunded vacancies, and we're also requesting 2 new positions. This will bring our proposed total FTEs to 18, and I'll get into more of that in a moment. On the next slide here, we're asking for an additional $685,500 over the FY25 budget amounts to bring our FY26 budget to $2,349,281. As you see on the table, the majority of these funds, $574,000, will go to market increases for our investigative team, as well as hiring the remaining authorized FTEs at the market salary. The remainder of the increase, $111,500, will go to additional office space for our office staff, as well as to bring our agency into the city's contract with Axiom. On this slide here, you'll see a table that provides a breakdown between what we're asking for in the proposed budget and our current state. As I mentioned earlier, we have the 9 positions, then we have the 7 unfunded vacant positions for a total of 16. On the row below that, we have the general fund ACRB proposed, where we have 18 total positions that I mentioned earlier, which includes 2 new positions. But putting the numbers aside for a moment, the real world meaning for citizens and officers is the faster complaint processing times. Deputy Director Sheena Robertson is going to talk just briefly about where we are right now as it relates to our complaints that we've received, to provide context for why we need this money to be able to continue our work.
Good afternoon. Sheena Robertson speaking, Deputy Director. Currently, we have a caseload of 164 cases. The investigation team consists of 2 investigators, one of whom started a few months ago, 1 investigation manager, and of course myself. The senior investigator and the investigation manager currently has a caseload of over 60 cases. A newly hired investigator is now at a caseload of over 25, and of course, including myself, I now have a full caseload. We're averaging approximately 3 to 5 newly assigned cases per week. Just from the beginning of 2025, and which we over a little over 4 months, we have received 116 complaints. 40% of those complaints have been assigned for a full investigation. Approximately 30% of those also required a preliminary investigation and which were ultimately dismissed for lack of merit, or it was determined that the officers were not APD or corrections. And that's not counting the 2 officer-involved shootings and 1 in custody death that the unit is also reviewing, which are very labor-intensive due to the enormous amount of documentary evidence associated with them. So the unit is currently struggling just to meet the current demand of influx of cases that are being filed weekly.
Thank you, Deputy Director Robertson. So what we have, currently we have a ratio of 1 investigator to 880 APD officers. With approval of our proposed budget, we would have a ratio of 1 investigator to 293 APD officers, and this will place the agency in better alignment with other agencies across the nation with similar authority that we identified in our benchmarking analysis. Going to the next slide. Going to the next slide. This graph shows an increase, shows the Department of Finance proposed budget for FY26 by line item. The graph shows the increase from FY24 actual to the FY25 adopted to the FY26 proposed. On the following slide, we're going to break this down a little further and discuss what that looks like compared to what it is, what we're proposing, and compared to what it is in the proposed budget book. Next slide. Okay. On the table that you see before you, Department of Finance budget increase of $72,589. That money only accounts for an increase in benefits costs. It does not address the unfunded vacancies, which is addressed in our proposed budget. The difference between the 2026 proposed budget on pages 403 and 405 and our budget is this. You have the difference of $564,180 for salaries regular with ACRB recommending $1,569,612, which includes additional funding for 7 current FTEs, 2 new roles, one role reclassification, and 3 market increases for our current investigators. As compared to Department of Finance proposing $1,005,432 for 14 FTEs, which again, that amount does not address the 44% unfunded positions or the 2 additional investigators and investigation salary adjustments approved by council earlier this year. There's also the difference of more than $135,222 for purchase contracts with ACRB, recommended $494,892 for expanded office space and Axion contract that I mentioned earlier, in the Department of Finance proposing $359,670. This is why we are requesting the $2.3 million under our proposed budget. At the end of the day, the point of our proposed budget is to equip the ACRB with a staffing level that is commensurate with other civilian oversight agencies across the nation, and prepare the ACRB for the upcoming increases in officer-involved shootings and the increases in complaints. There's some appendixes that are attached to this, what I could happily go over if needed. And at this time, I'll take some questions and provide answers.
Okay. Thank you. Questions, comments? I'll start off. So I'm not on public safety. I understand there's been a lot of discussion about this recently. And so forgive me if I'm not as up on those discussions as some of my colleagues. So obviously there's been a lot of discussion about your inspector positions and the vacancies. Now, I believe that a couple of months ago, council approved legislation giving you 2 additional spots. Were those funded or unfunded?
Those are unfunded at the time.
Okay, so you currently have 14 positions.
We currently have 14.
That's exclusive, and those are all funded, correct?
No,
No.
no, only 9 of those 14 were funded, have been funded.
So it looks like there's a problem in finding people and onboarding them. So what are some of the challenges and burdens that prevent these positions from being filled more timely?
Okay, so we have two challenges. One relates to the unfunded vacancies that we have, right? Meaning no money. We have the positions, but we don't have the money to go with those. We are hopeful that will be remedied very soon. As it relates to the investigative positions and filling those positions, the biggest challenge was offering a competitive salary for the investigators. We wanted investigators to come in who would do the work for $50,000, and that hasn't been able to attract individuals. Fortunately, though, we've been able to increase that to $65,000, and we've been having better responses. We're hopeful that there's one individual that we're looking at who may be able to come on soon, and we're going to continue to advertise and interview to get those positions filled.
And you've been here for a while now. How long?
Yes. 2012.
Since 2012. And over that time, officer-involved shootings, is it up and down? Is it variable from year to year? Is there a decline over the last couple of years?
Prior to 2020, we did not track officer-involved shootings like that. If someone filed a complaint with us, then we would follow up and investigate it. From our meaning pre-2020, the number compared to other departments did not appear to be as high. Now in 2020, when we started tracking it, we did notice an increase in 21 and 22, a significant increase in officer-involved shootings. In 23, those numbers dropped. 24, those numbers dropped. We anticipate we're going to have an influx of cases related to those 21s and 22s that will be coming to conclusion at some point, and then we'll start investigating those. One of the other issues is that under the 2020 ordinance, we also have authority related not only to officer-involved shootings, but also serious bodily injuries and gun discharges, investigations that we're able to conduct.
How do you all benchmark yourself? Who do you benchmark against?
Actually, it's a good question. The department, we're always looking at other civilian oversight agencies, seeing what they're doing, looking at their numbers, annual reports and things. Recently, there was a benchmarking analysis that was done that we compared our work to similar agencies in similar cities to what they do. And one of the things that we did notice was that agencies with the similar authority that we have, they actually have mandated funding that corresponds with the officers, the number of officers on the department. For example, San Francisco has 1 to 100 officers, a ratio of 1 to 100. Chicago has, Washington D.C. has 1 to 225. A couple of places like Chicago, I believe, and New York, they have where 1% of the police department's budget goes towards the towards the oversight agency. On one of the and I can certainly share this with you with the benchmarking that was done related to the funding and our authority, so I certainly can provide that to you. No, it's not in the packet.
All right, you referenced the negotiation of an MOU
Yes.
between your organization and APD. Again, I'm not on public safety, so could you fill us in a little bit about that exercise?
Yes. The agency and APD, with the assistance of the mayor's strategic team, have been meeting, have several meetings to identify issues and make sure we have processes in place to avoid criticisms in the future. So making sure everyone understands what needs to be reported, when it needs to be reported, and how it's going to be reported. Then there's also where we will have issues, there's a process for ways to address those issues that can be escalated up the chain of command as needed. We believe that this is going to allow us to be able to receive timely notifications of officer-involved shootings and also timely notifications of when cases close, when investigations close, so that we can engage our process to do these investigations. That's why it's critical that we have this investigative staff so we can start training them, getting them up, because you can't just bring somebody in and expect them to be able to do something like an officer-involved shooting. It requires time, it requires training, it requires a commitment of us and them, getting them ready to be able to do those types of investigations while maintaining our ongoing and growing caseload.
All right, I'll just close by noting that your budget presentation's a little bit different because we have two boxes. There's the administration recommendation, what I'll call recommendation, and then what I will call y'all's request.
Yes.
So, council, we're going to have to be mindful of that as we move forward. Mr. Wan's up, and then followed by Ms. Collins.
Perfect setup for my questions. Thank you for the presentation, because essentially what y'all are doing now is you're asking for another $685,000, maybe a little less than that, $600,000 over what's in our budget book. So if we approve this, we're first of all going to have to figure out a funding source for that, right? And
yes.
So I'm sure finance is aware if we get to that point, or whatever point we get to. So I want to dive into that a little bit more. I'm looking ahead in the packet. There is a table that details your positions in the request that you're looking for that constitute that $570,000 increase in salaries. Yes. So if we can go through that really quickly, I'm presuming that the first three items that are market increases, is that to get everybody up to 65,000?
Yes.
Okay.
That's to get our investigators up to the 65,000, and plus making sure that we're providing parity to the ones that are on the team.
Okay, so basically, if we do that, and then the other vacant positions that we're looking to hire, everybody would be making 65. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so where are we? So now I'm on to items 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we approved those positions in January. The two, where are we in the hiring process for those?
Yes. The Vacancy Review Board has approved those items recently. So we are hopeful being able to fill those positions.
Got it. Okay. I didn't realize those were caught up in that Vacancy Review Board process, so you weren't even able to move forward on that until you got that. Okay. So now that you have that, again, I'm thinking about, we traditionally will allocate partial year if we think that we're not going to have them hired in by July 1st, right? So there's a factor that we can do on those. All right, so let's keep going. 8, 9, and 10. are support positions that you currently have created in your FTEs but not funded, right? So you're asking to fund those. So what was the challenge in filling those before? Because these are pretty straightforward positions. They're not like specialized or anything. So why were these not filled?
Well, part of that is we've never had the full funding for all of these positions.
Okay.
So what we're doing is playing some catch up now to fully fund the agency for the positions that we have. That's been a frustrating part of ours.
Okay.
As it relates to like these positions when they become vacant, and then when finance runs its reports about the number of FTEs, that money may not be counted.
Okay.
So that's the challenge that we're in.
Okay. And I know that finance wants to respond to this, but let me finish these questions and I'll flip it over to them. And the two new positions, 11 and 12, just real quickly, the rationale for those. I mean, if you have the full complement of all the items 4 through 10, these next two positions,
yes.
Explain the criticality of those, please.
Okay. The administrative investigative position is critically important. The body-worn camera footage requires a significant amount of time to be able to review, and the number of cases that we're receiving and officer-involved shootings is going to really be labor-intensive for our investigators. Their use of time could be spent better doing investigations than the administrative parts of requesting documents, making sure they have everything to prepare files for their investigations. And we believe an administrative investigator would be able to, an administrative assistant for the investigations team would allow them to use their time better than doing a whole bunch of administrative type of tasks, which are important, but we need investigators doing investigative work.
Okay.
I just want to add that they spend approximately 35% to 40% doing administrative tasks.
Okay. And then project manager is same logic?
The project manager, that's related to, under our authority, we have the authority to engage in community outreach. And that's a big part of what we do, and it's an important part of what we do. We rely on contractors, we rely on working with other individuals outside of the city to allow us to do this, not at a discount, but at a way that we can get the most for our money. And what we found is that without having a consistent point person, things do not work out the way that we want them to all the time. And so we're trying to just get ourselves structurally better as we continue to increase our authority, as we not increase our authority, but as we continue to get increased demand from the citizens about what they want us to be able to do. We need to make sure that we can deliver on that.
Okay. I haven't forgotten y'all, but I'm presuming, because it's just a big jump in terms of what your team looks like today to what this is envisioning. Like if you had it, it'd be overnight. I'm presuming that I think the other component of your budget request would really be part of it is building out your space so that you can accommodate all these folks. Okay. Finance wanted to opine.
I will add, now, had we already been funded for those positions, it wouldn't seem like it's a big bump.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, that's the reality of it.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, council members. Kimberly Finley, Interim Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Human Resources. I just wanted to go back to those two mission critical investigator senior positions. They are currently posted on our website. As of today, 92 people have applied to those positions, and right now we have 61 folks that we're currently vetting, even deeper to send on over to the department. So I did want to go back to ensure that we as over in HR are doing what we need to do to assist ACRB.
That's encouraging. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems like the salary piece, we've hit something there, so that's good.
Absolutely.
Was that all? Okay.
What we wanted to share.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so
Okay.
much,
You've
Vanessa.
given me something to chew on. I appreciate it, Mr. Chair. I yield.
No, Councilwoman and I think alike. Those are my exact same questions as well. Thank you so much.
There's something I wanted to ask about, and that is your purchase and contracted supply line. I mean, there's a lot of ups and downs here. 25 adopted was 383. Your actual, I had it in front of me, was a lot less. And then this year's ask, it's right back up. What are the main items that make up that line, and why the up and down pattern?
Yes. Let me address this first one. That major increase that you see for this year is related to a one-time cost most of it related to a one-time cost related to building out the space, if we were able to get the additional staff. Okay, so that's the major cost of it. And then the other piece of it is when the city contracted with Axion, the body-worn camera, ACRB wasn't included in that. So we had to go out and make a new contract with them, and we're trying to get ourselves into that contract. So that's where that other money is related, to be able to deal with that. As it relates to, as it relates to ups and downs, sometimes when we're trying to contract with people as it relates to our outreach or different services, if we don't have the money to be able, let's say we have $20, but they want $50 to do it, we're not going to have the $50 to do it. So we wind up having the $20 that's just sitting there. So we experience ups and downs from time to time as it relates to our services, but that's the nature of how we try to do our work. We try to save money where we can, and we try to get the best deals that we can.
All right, thank you. That's all I.
I'd like to add
Yes.
also, this is Myola Smith. I would like to add that other contracts that have increased in cost would be our transcription. And the more investigators we bring on, of course, the more that cost will go up. Currently, our transcription, and these are the police interviews and witness interviews, currently we are at about $40,000 a year just on transcription. And the board does, it seems to benefit the board and the investigation reports that are being prepared when you have that transcription available. And that cost is just constantly going up, and it's just transcription.
All right.
The other cost would be the public portal where citizens can file their complaints. And you mentioned Axon. Again, that is going to cost us over the next 5 to 10 years another $100,000 because we were not included in the $100 million contract with Axion. So were other departments not included. So we have to absorb that cost.
Thank you. That is all I had. Does anyone else have anything? I'm not seeing any hands raised, so thank you for coming in.
Thank you. I just want to correct a mistake. I failed to introduce my deputy directors, Sheena Robertson and Myola Smith, and they've been the godsend. And thank you to the mayor's administration for helping through this MOU, and thank you all for the opportunity to present. I hope you seriously consider this budget request, because, I mean, at the end of the day, we can have the authority, we can have the positions, and if they're unfunded, we still will not be able to meet the citizens' demand. Thank you.
No, and you're right, and I think we've shown recently how, important we know your job is, and we would like to see your work. We would like to see you be able to ratchet up the work you do another rung or two.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, looks like we have earned ourselves 30 minutes of recess time, at which time we will hear from our final presenter of the day, law. So we're in recess until 3. Thank you. right, good afternoon, everyone. If it's 3 o'clock, this must be the law department. Their data can be found on page 173 of your hymnal. So, Law, if you're ready, take it away.
Good afternoon, City Councilmen and women, members. My name is Patrice Perkins Hooker, and I have the honor to be the City Attorney for Atlanta, and I oversee the operations of 85 individuals who practice law on behalf of the City of Atlanta. With me today are my deputies who are involved in the various areas in which we exercise our input for the city. On my far right is my litigation deputy, Mr. Torrey Smith. On my right adjacent to me is my Deputy Chief of Finance, Mashir Bailey. On my left is Deputy Cheryl Ringer, who's in charge of the municipal services, including the police, fire, municipal court, and finance. And then next to her is Kimberly Patrick, and Deputy Patrick has been the oversight and at the helm of the airport for years, and we're very fortunate that she's one of the people in the department who've been here more than 28 years, and she has a lot of experience in this. And then to her left is Deputy Sharon Roach, and Deputy Roach oversees the operations of Atlanta DOT, Department of Watershed Management, and the Department of Public Works, which is our infrastructural operations group. And I'm here representing both myself as City Attorney and the head of the Business Services Group, whose deputy has been reassigned to procurement. So I've been overseeing the activities of the individuals who support procurement, contracts, and real estate. Our presentation is going to be very brief to allow you to have time for questions. Here is an actual pictorial image of the flow of our organizational structure, and I hope everybody has a copy of the presentation in front of them. Okay. Page 3 of the presentation, it basically goes through and looks at our year in review for what we have done and accomplished in fiscal year 25 and what we are planning on doing in fiscal year 26. The breakdown in our accomplishments is based upon the mayor's priorities, and that includes a city of opportunity for all. We have been actively engaged in providing opportunities for future generations to experience what the practice of law is like. We have increased the number of students on all levels that we have given an opportunity to have internships, and we're going to do the same this summer. We have volunteered to assist in the elections activities in November of 2024, and then we've also done 2 senior wills events where we provide will and estate planning assistance to seniors in the community. We did that in December of 2024 and April of this year, and our next one is June 21st of this summer. And then we have participated as speakers in various programs that are designed to showcase, if you will, minority lawyers to communities where they're rarely exposed to people of color and women lawyers. And those are our top 3 accomplishments, but not all of the accomplishments in the category of a city of opportunity for all. In the category of One Safe City, we have successfully defended challenges against the city regarding the construction of the Public Safety Training Center and the alleged impacts on the local river, which included defending litigation about alleged environmental hazards associated with that. We have mediated and resolved compliance-related disputes on the ongoing Calhoun federal consent order, and that, to remind you, involves a consent order that was put in place as a result of an episode of violence and an outbreak in a club in Buckhead. And we have been dealing with that and finally have gotten to the point of having an agreement that we think is fairer for the city, which will end oversight and monitoring as of December of this year. We also successfully completed negotiations with the Atlanta Fire Rescue on behalf of the city to finalize a collective bargaining agreement that we think was beneficial to both parties, but it was definitely done in an amicable manner such that there was agreement being able to be reached between both sides. On page 4, City Built for the Future, which is where we're headed. The Professional Development Committee hosted its 11th annual continuing education seminar on March 7th and March 21st. Attorneys have to have 12 CLE hours each year. We were able to get outside counsel that you all invest a lot of money with to do this for us for free. This was the first time we have done that where we gone and been hosted by their offices, so we didn't have to expend anything for the CLE. And when you have as many lawyers, when you have an excess of 50 lawyers and you're spending $1,200 or so each for continuing legal education, this is a very significant savings. We provided legal services on projects in support of the mayor's commitment to housing and development initiatives. I'm sure that you all have seen all of the programs that are coming through for various housing initiatives for affordability as well as for homelessness. Our team, a mighty few in the real estate department, have been really engaged with all of that, from the legislation as well as the documents that lead to closing, including preparation of development agreements, et cetera. And we provided all legal services required for support activities regarding the widening of Concourse D. And that requires a lot of construction, design contracts, as well as any other support contracts that are needed for this particular project, which was massive. In effective and ethical government, we work to support the efforts of the OIG and the Ethics Task Force, and we created legislation and modified legislation to improve the operations of this group. That took a significant amount of time from our team. And the Labor and Employment Division has provided advice and counsel to ensure that the implementation of the class and compensation study changes complied with the Federal Labor Standards Act. Including the rollback of new and forthcoming changes to the FLSA in January of 2025. As you may recall, the pay and comp study had some changes in classification from exempt to non-exempt, and as a result, we had to deal with going back and looking at each of those positions to make certain that they were still, even though they were designated under the study as exempt, that if they weren't exempt under the new laws, then we had to have those changes made, and we worked with HR to do so. What is new and improved? We have improved the use of technology such that our case document management system and Monday.com is hopefully going to help us streamline work. It's definitely going to help us manage and projects and track duties associated with the projects. We have implemented a new judicial and RAM procedures for code enforcement violation cases. The reason we did that is because we were losing the city's money in an NRAM administrative process because we could not collect upon those liens after 7 years. And many times people don't have the wherewithal to pay them, or they haven't sold the properties or been engaged in any financial transactions that would allow the liens to be satisfied. By changing it over to the judicial and RAM process, we're able to handle the cases and to get the liens from those cases attached to the land for a lot longer period of time. And they have higher priority and therefore are able to be paid consistent with a tax lien rather than be a lower priority that was granted to the NRAM administrative liens. And then we've drafted and introduced legislation to correct problems in the special administrative permitting process. I want you to know that's one of the things that we're proud of, because that legislation was introduced into the state legislature to address a problem they created for the necessity of a lot of hearings that didn't really need to be heard when you're just dealing with an administrative permit. And those are our accomplishments in summary. The position count that was requested of us is on page 6, and you will see the breakdown. A lot of members of our team are fractionally assigned to different funds, and that's why you don't have an even number of people by fund, but you have an even number of people. It's total of 86. I, for one, I'm a third, and there's several other people who are a third as well. Our proposed budget information from the general fund only. On page 7, it highlights where we have started out in 2024 based on actuals, what the adopted 2025 budget was, and then the 2025 projections are higher than what was budgeted. And then the actual proposed budget reflects the difference between those two, and it comes to a more true relationship between what the actual expenditures will be this year and the budget that has been proposed for next year. And that represents an overall increase of 20%, but that 20% is largely made out of from the increase in contracted services to try to make certain that the outside counsel goes back to what is more closely aligned to what was expended in 2024, 2025's adopted budget, and then we projected that forward to fiscal year 2006 budget. All right, I've laid out just the basics, but you've got several pages of information that were in your budget book. If you have any questions about anything we presented, I and my team will be delighted to address those.
Yes, thank you. I'll start off with a few. And one of the difficulties we're having in assessing this budget request is because we not only have to compare 26 proposed with 25 proposed, but then we have to take into account the 25 actuals.
Yes.
So those are wildly different numbers. So let's, I guess, start with your 25 actuals. Mm-hmm. So thanks for giving them to us. What were some of the factors that drove your actuals higher in a couple of your categories than what was proposed? What happened that y'all didn't think was going to happen?
Well, as you know, we ended up with a lot of litigation during fiscal year 2025, from everything dealing with the public safety of training facility, annexation cases, which were not related, forecasted. We've also had significant legal expenses associated with the environmental challenges of RM Clayton, as well as South River for that matter. And, those types of things are things that you cannot project in advance, which is why it's difficult to deal with legal needs and services. So in our projections, if you notice, for fiscal year 2025, we are projected to have $9,216,000 when the budget adopted was it was low. It was at $6 million, but the year before, the actuals were $10.3 million. I have worked with the Department of Finance to reduce the amount of utilization of outside counsel by $500,000 this year. When we started out, I guess we found out that we needed to do that in March, and so we've been doing that, and that's been aggressive. But the actually adopted budget was unrealistically low compared to if you look at the fiscal year 2024 actuals. So I've been working to try to make certain we come in as low as possible, but there have been significant lawsuits. And we've had a couple of police fatalities, police-involved fatalities, as well as we even had litigation involving people who were tased, who were young people and tased during the Black Lives Matter marches. So all types of unforeseen types of things. But I think that that probably happens every year. You've been here a long time, Councilmember Shook, so I know you know whatever happens, we have to defend.
No, that's right. And I will say, I will commend you and your team. We never like having to deal with these settlements.
Yeah.
Partly that's a fiduciary response, and partly it's just the humane aspect of what's happened that we've been involved with and have had to work through. And it varies from year to year. I always like it when we can stretch out payments across multiple budget cycles. That's always helpful. So it looks like your contract services line, after a big jump in terms of last year adopted compared to projections, but then you're anticipating a $1 million reduction or $2 million reduction in that line. What accounts for that?
The reduction is a projection of what we hope to experience by virtue of a couple of things. One is the continued commitment to try to bring more cases in-house and get more people who are trained in the expertise in litigation areas that we currently don't have. For example, we don't have environmental lawyers, we don't have aviation lawyers, we don't have constitutional law experts, we don't have complex employment law, we don't have people who can handle class action lawsuits, nor do we have the staff to deal with class action lawsuits. But we have taken on this year more regular employment law matters in-house. And those matters would be things that we could either get out of very quickly through motions to dismiss based on sovereign immunity, or we were the improper party, so we're not automatically outsourcing cases involving employment law. We are trying to see if there's anything we can do to save us from spending a lot of money with employment law firms. My hope is that for this next year, we will continue that trend. And as you see, we've been doing a good job, if you notice, with reducing the pro rata each month or quarter expenditure in that area. So that's my hope. Now, if you ask me to put my arm on a book, I'm telling you that $8 million is less than any year, but we're still working toward it.
Yeah. I guess that's a good segue into outside counsel. You know, what we do in-house versus outside counsel is, it's not unusually a source of some friction around here. What is your philosophy that you deploy to determine when it's in-house and when you go outside? I mean, it's obvious if it's a subject matter where we just don't have anyone qualified. But other than that.
Well, that is our philosophy, and the bulk of our expenditures, 56% of our expenditures on outside counsel involve environmental cases, negligence, nuisance, flooding cases that are huge, 1983 civil rights cases, employment defamation, injunctions. Again, these are federal cases, 1983 civil rights cases. And then we also have dealt with a lot of nuisance, 1983, different law. I'm reading through the law firms. Different law firms handle a lot of the different types of matters, but it's the same type of subject area that I gave you highlights on. What we are doing now, and I have my deputy here to tell you, is we're not going to be able to pay lawyers the fees, the salaries to attract these type of lawyers, but we are able to pay lawyers for work that involves employment, work that involves regular routine. I think you said it was slip and fall trip. Can you state specifics, Mr. Smith?
Yes, Torrey Smith, Deputy City Attorney over litigation. And to just expound upon what the Madam City Attorney said is that we're trying to bring all of those sort of common cases that the city sees in routine, car accidents, trip and falls, and claw back some of the things that as a specialty we've sent out to outside counsel, such as employment litigation, nuisance / environmental litigation, and some of the high-profile police cases that involve allegations of violation of civil rights. Those cases are sometimes very cumbersome because they involve a lot of documents, a lot of body-worn camera video and witnesses, and so those cases have been sent outside to outside counsel traditionally. And I think just one last thing about philosophy-wise, there are cases that can suck up the time of our in-house attorneys such that they won't be able to spend as much time on the bulk of their caseload. So those are cases that we have in the past sent to outside counsel that we're hoping to keep more of them in-house.
Yeah, because we assign roughly 20 cases at any given time to in-house attorneys, whereas if they took one class action lawsuit or one extraordinarily wrongful death action, it would take one, they could only handle that one case with the discovery, with the pleadings, with all of that. And that is not the efficient use of resources in order to provide staffing to all of the departments in the city.
Okay, what about the fees to hire these hired guns? Is that, I assume it never goes down, I assume it's going up. Is it going up at a steady state or is it variable?
Well, it's variable and based upon discipline. So we pay people anywhere from $350 an hour all the way up to about $600 an hour, and it depends on the specialty. There are some special attorneys based upon uniquenesses of their skills that may be paid, what is it, 700 is the highest? 700 is the highest. That's the highest, and that's like one or two firms, and it's only for one or two matters that require uniqueness. But everybody else fits within that range, and we closely inspect invoices. We make certain we stay on top of the performance of those firms. Deputy Smith's team gets reports on a monthly basis on what's happening with regard to progress on those firms and activities. And we have written down bills and invoices from time to time based upon sometimes errors in billing charges being charged for matters that don't relate to our files, as well as matters that we think that the work was not quite up to snuff with regard to the time that was put in. So we diligently look at that as a way to save some money.
What is the decision process behind deciding who gets what work?
Okay, the code gives that that discretion to me. I try to make certain I'm diversifying the pool and ability of people in the pool to do work. So some firms who may have been only doing one type of work, if they have the capacity to do something else at a lower hourly rate, I will give them an opportunity with a smaller case. I make every assignment through a notice of new matter or a notice of engagement. We provide to the council a list of the firms that we have used, I think on a quarterly basis, monthly basis, excuse me. Chief Bailey over here, Deputy Bailey, Deputy Chief Bailey is the one who prepares that, and she does it on a monthly basis, so you'll know, and if you compare from month to month, you see that there are some firms who remain the same because they have a historical history, record of experience with the city, and it makes it a little less expensive for us rather than starting up new folks. And then there's some new firms that have been added since I've come, as well as I actively pursue joint venture relationships with firms. So some of the firms listed have been joint ventured partners with some of the other firms who are larger.
What do you reckon the right size of your department to be?
If I had the dream, I don't know if you recall, but I've had a lot of experience with dealing with management of law firms in general before I got here, and including governmental entities. And we did a survey of Fulton, Charlotte, and Houston, which were cities or municipalities that were county or municipalities that were similar in size. And we would have to have, if we did more work, we would have to have more attorneys. We would have to have, for a $2.2 billion operation and an almost 10,000 employee base, we would need about 100 lawyers. But those lawyers would come at a higher expense because the ones I need to hire are the environmental, the specialists on wrongful death cases, 1983 cases, those things. And so that would increase our budget astronomically, and I don't think that that's reasonable, but we can work with, and I have diligently pursued a management approach that allows me to try to fill every position as soon as possible. So when it becomes vacant, we fill it, try to get someone in there, and we've been able to manage that. Now we have, at any given point in time, vacancies, because those vacancies are created by virtue of creating positions and having to go through personnel papers, like you're going to have one with this one, to change people from one place to another. But we try to promote from within where possible. In fact, Deputy Smith has been with the city 14 years, except for a brief stint where he went to CDC. The VA to do litigation, and then we brought him back to be litigation deputy. So these people, by and large, have been here a long time, with the exception of Deputy Ringer, who worked at Fulton County, and she headed up the finance group there, support group there.
How much of a revolving door and attrition is caused by examples of relatively young attorneys coming in here? They're not paid maybe as much as they could make out in the private sector, but they're here because they know they have the opportunity to gain experience they're not going to gain anywhere else as quickly. And then when they get to where they want to be, then it's out the door. How much of a problem is that?
Right now, we have not experienced that degree of problems, and that's because primarily we have an operating philosophy that allows us to hire people who are 3 to 5 years. That's as young as I can go. They've got to have some knowledge. So we're not the place for people right out of school to come. And so generally, if you've been out a little bit, you know what's out there, you know what you can get paid, you know what your opportunities are, and you come here looking to make a contribution to public service. We are only, at these salaries, the only reason they don't come here is because they want to be a public servant and they want to help. And so we have, I don't know if Jared's here. We have one lawyer, Jared, who's been out about 3-4 years. He came from a private practice background and is doing litigation. And then we have another lawyer, Charlie Hewlett, who is doing zoning support, and she got sworn in within the last year. But she was she's in the planning group. She has a degree, an advanced degree in planning and zoning, and she's made a tremendous contribution to that area. So we don't have that turnover. I've only, you know, the 9th will be my first full year here. So we haven't had that much turnover based upon new people coming in and rolling out. We lost one person to the federal government, and then she lost her job because she had only been there 90 days. So,
what has tort reform done, and what is it going to mean to you in the city?
Well, I actually was an advocate last year. When I first came on board, I said we need to get involved with tort reform. Before it was even introduced, I had mentioned that to the mayor as a way of limiting the liability of the city. I really hope that you all as city council people and the politicians really get behind trying to do something to establish caps on what can be recovered, because that's where the municipalities face the highest risk. Someone gets hurt, yes, but if you get hurt with $200,000 of medical bills, you shouldn't get a judgment of $7 million against you, because juries are not in sympathy, they're not in support of municipalities, they're not in support of policemen, they're not in support of a lot of things that happen. And without some type of reasonable cap, then we're going to continue to experience uncontrolled verdicts. When the legislation was introduced this year for the state to be granted $1 million limit in liability for any type of action, not just the vehicle accidents, I was all supportive of GMA. Let's go add the cities, let's add the counties, let's add those, because all we're doing is shifting the financial burden to the taxpayers. And I think that that's unreasonable. I don't think it needs to be so low that people can't actually recover for their injuries and damages they sustain, but I am definitely in favor of it and worked really hard with our allies to try to get that bill approved and amended to include us. It didn't get amended to include us, but at least they made a first step to have a limit on the state.
Well, speaking of claims, I've got what I have always felt is a great idea to drive down our claims costs. I've asked all the other city attorneys who have been here. They all think I'm crazy, but I haven't asked you yet. It is my belief that particularly around vehicle accidents, but probably across the board, if those claims costs had to come out of the operating department's budget, you would magically see a reduction in accidents and other claims. Your response?
It would be nice if that was the case, but the problem is the city as a whole is still financially responsible for the liability of all of its employees, regardless of the departments that they're in. And if it came out of a department's budget, I don't think you want to design a program that would hamper the ability of parks or public works to do their functions because somebody in their department causes an accident. They happen. Fire trucks hit people's parked vehicles and take off the side view mirror. Well, that happens. It's a huge vehicle navigating down narrow streets. And I don't think we would take money away from fire because that accident occurred. So I think that it sounds good, but in practicality, you might have a difficult time implementing that and still running the city.
All right. Well, you've said it very nicely. And because I won't be around to ask the next person, that'll be the last time I ask that in public. Mr. Wan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam City Attorney, for the presentation. First off, I just want to thank you and your department for the work that you do. I have to say, in this term, and I know you've only been here a year, but I do feel like, and the community feels like the city has taken a more assertive position in terms of our rights and our code and defending it. And I know those decisions often bubble up to you. And I on behalf of my district, I just want to thank y'all for holding the line with us on a number of cases in my district. And I would also add, and I'm not saying that I would suggest you go ask for a runaway budget, but your department is one that I would be less inclined to scrimp on because you are our first line of defense. And it does make me nervous, some of the conversation about reductions in your budget and the logic behind them. It sounds somewhat, it's just, well, yeah, I was instructed to reduce, so I found ways to cut. I'm like, actually, no, you and like take out, and don't, AIM is probably gonna think that I'm supporting their asking for a runaway budget, but there's certain things that we need to invest in because you're protecting the city. AIM is providing kind of efficiencies and operational support. So anyway, I'll open with that. I do want to ask, with your staffing positions, I'm assuming you're also subject to if the position was vacant, it's unfunded for next year, and you're just holding firm with the filled positions, right?
That's correct. We would treat it the same way.
So the increase in the salaries regular is, then it should be, and I'm looking at finance, should purely be the increases in class and comp as well as, well, that's really it, because the benefits, the pension stuff is further down the line. Is that correct? Okay, all right. Which is good. You said that one of your strategies going into next year is to try and bring folks in with expertise, but also train our internal folks. And I'm not necessarily seeing where that is falling out in which line item. Is that something y'all know, where would that show up? Just in salaries alone, or is there any professional development that y'all are talking about doing to try and lift folks?
No, the professional development is done in-house by more senior attorneys, so there are no expenses in that.
Perfect.
But what I do want to say is that the administration has been very supportive of our department in providing our needs. One of those largest needs was adjusting our salaries to make it competitive so we can get talent. And I appreciate that support. And I think I'm envisioning that when we go forward, when we're doing our good job and we're doing the best that we can, that they will provide us what we need.
All right, so purchase contracted services. Now, you weren't here when the FY25 budget was put together, but clearly there was some logic in the reduction from 24 to 25. Does anybody have a sense of what that is and why it didn't transpire? I'm just curious because it was a conscious decision, right? And I just want to make sure we understand what didn't materialize so that we either recognize that won't be a phenomenon going forward or something else. So no one knows?
Well, as you indicated, I wasn't here, and our deputy in charge of litigation came back in February of last year, so he wasn't here for the preparation. But I think it was probably, if I had to guess, since no one else up here knows specifically, is a desire of the administration to base the budget based upon what they thought, which was an increase over the previous year's budget. If you've noticed, it was $3 million, and then you get hit with lawsuits, and everything was exceeded beyond what was budgeted. But it was an increase. The 2023 budget for professional services was $11 million. The actual was $14, and the fiscal year adopted for the Department of Law budget, I'm looking on page 181, was $15,301,000. So it was an increase from what was the expenditure. So I don't know where the decrease, maybe it was just the general fund numbers you're looking at.
I mean, because we weren't under the same financial pressures as significant as last year. So finance looks like y'all might have an answer.
So when you look at page 181 to the city attorney's point, when you look at FY14 actuals, that's 14 million, and then the adopted budget was 15, and so now we're proposing 16 million for FY26. So you do see an increase in purchase service contracts in that line. And I'm on page 181 of the budget book.
But general, okay, look at it 182.
Okay.
So purchased, you're running an 8.5, then a 10.4, and then all of a sudden FY25, you're dropping 40%. So that's an intentional change. And so there was a basis for it.
Correct. So when you look on page 182, the actuals for FY23 was 8.5 million, and then the actuals were 10.3 and 24, and then we reduced the adopted budget. This was really based on the assumption that we wanted departments to kind of right size and look at where the budget should be for purchase service contracts. We can actually go back and pull the information on how we developed that budget in that particular year.
Again, there was an intentionality behind jumping from a 10.4 down to a 6.2 in that year. Yeah, you know? It was, okay, it was a shifting to an enterprise fund is what
Yes,
I
and
think.
we do have departments that we split fund. Law is one of those departments with aviation and watershed, and so we're trying to be intentional about all departments that impact other enterprise funds.
Okay. I got you. So the overall budget didn't change. It was just more
Right. Yes, and page 181 indicates.
Okay. Well, then let's go on that thread too. So purchase contract services for from FY25 to 26, we're dropping $1 million from that, which is 20%. So there's some intentionality behind that as well. What's the reason?
Which page are you referring to?
So 184.
184.
I'm looking just at adopt.
Okay, that's the airport fund, and
is that simply because we had pumped money in there and then we're just kind of taking
trying to
part
right
of it back out?
size it? It doesn't expend that amount of money, and if you notice the historical numbers, you'll see that we're not using those allocated funds. So it does reflect a decrease in the adopted budget, but that increase still comes out in our total all across all funds budget on 181 as of $865,000 net increase in a line item for purchase contracted services over what was proposed in fiscal year 25.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's tough without the benefit of knowing who, the person who prepared this for y'all last year, knowing why that shift was made, what the reality turned out to be, and why only partially it's being shifted back. So, okay, with that, Yeah, again, I just close with the appreciation for how aggressive and assertive your department has been in standing with the city and communities. I'm not trying to drill down on the contractor service because I do understand we often will want experts, subject matter experts and specialists because some of these defenses are very nuanced and involved. And so I'm always supportive of us getting the best. If we don't have it internally because it's not part of our routine operations, then we should go get it. And we should not be afraid to spend to go get it. So anyway, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield.
President Shipman.
Thank you. Just want to give you an opportunity to speak just briefly around the enterprise funds, so the airport funding and the water and sewer funding. Those are not insignificant in the budget, $6.7 million from airport, $8.3 million from water. Can you just talk a little bit about the kinds of things that the office does in those two arenas?
Yes, Chairmanship. What they do in those areas is provide all of the legal services, especially in aviation. We have very few, as you can tell by the expenditures, outside counsel. And Deputy Patrick, can you provide a little bit more of an overview of some specific examples of what it is we do there?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Kimberly Patrick, Deputy City Attorney, Airport Legal Division. We provide, like City Attorney Patrice Hooker said, we provide all of the legal advice and counsel for everything that happens at the airport. So that could be anything related to real estate, contracts, employment matters. Coming up next year, we have the World Cup, and so there are a lot of issues around that as the airport prepares for that. There have been some bankruptcies that have now taken place with some concessionaires, and so we don't have that expertise in-house, and so we do have to go outside to get that expertise. So just about anything that will happen at the airport, security-wise, regulation-wise, dealing with TSA, the FAA, we do it. And we do a lot of it in-house. And when we don't have the expertise, we do go outside, and we do work with a couple of law firms who specialize in airport law. And they have experience with the FAA with over 50 years of experience. And so we can go to them when we have very specific questions.
And you have been our deputy in charge of aviation for how many years?
I would say about 14 years.
We have a lot of expertise in this deputy.
And on the water side, just briefly touch on the types of work that we do on water.
Deputy Roach, you want to talk about water?
Yes, Sharon Hamilton Broach, the Deputy City Attorney for Operations, which includes watershed. And that expense is also outside counsel. The environmental matters require a certain expertise that we do not have internally. And that includes litigation for the Atlanta Police Training Facility, RM Clayton as well. We also have water and sewer board appeals that go to litigation. So we also have water rate challenges. All of those things require extensive litigation, a specialized team. The discovery is expansive, and we could not handle that internally with our watershed team. So it is generally very highly specialized litigation involving our water client.
Thank you for that. And I just point out for the public, we've got a $13.5 million law budget relative to the general fund. The airport and water and sewer are roughly the same size budgets, give or take. And those are on about a $6.7 million airport, $8.3 million water. So actually proportionally a little bit less. But I think just to put it into context, that we have to spend a lot of money on legal. Those are big budgets, right? Those are each $1 billion budgets. And so it sort of makes sense within that context. I just want to turn to one other thing. One thing, as you know, Madam City Attorney, that my office and your office share are claims intakes. The public, those who know, the public often is required to drop them off at the mayor's office or the council president's office. They usually come to my office. I just wanted to ask, similar to Councilmember Shook, state law requires that they either come to the mayor or the council president. I think that's probably because a lot of cities don't enjoy having a robust law department like we do, but every city has a mayor and or a council. Would you support actually the state legislature allowing those claims to go directly to the law department in the case of big cities? That way there's not the handoff, there's not the accusation that they've been lost between my office and your office. Do you think administratively that would be better?
I think it would be better because it at least streamlined the receipt of a claim. But Deputy Smith, am I missing something? Am I setting you up for something?
No. I mean, I think it can streamline the process and it make it more direct because they do have to come from your offices to the law department where we process and pay them. So I do understand that.
Something for our state legislature agenda for next year. Just on that, I want to ask, could you just give us a little overview of any current backlog that we have on those? And also, are there an overabundance of vacant positions in that arena, or are we sort of fully staffed relative to the volume that we're seeing right now? Because this is one of the places where the public, obviously, once they file a claim, they want to know the process is moving, they want communication. This is something that we get a lot of constituent calls about. So I just want to talk for a few minutes about the budget and how it is staffing for the claims process.
Well, we actually have several vacant positions in claims that are not vacant positions, but they're reflected in the total of vacant positions because we use a lot of temporary people that we are waiting to get the positions established in the personnel paper. However, we have done a yeoman's effort in clearing up that backlog. When I came here, it was 750 cases that were just in the claim stage. So I decided to beef up that department in order to support them in their activities. It takes a lot to process a claim. It comes in, you have to review it, then you have to do an investigation, then you have to respond. And that is not a 10-day response period. It's 30, 45, and in cases when we were backlogged, it was sometimes taking months. So I jumped on that when I came in, and I think now that we're down to not having a backlog just the current month. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, we worked on that because it was unacceptable for me. And since I also represent you guys and you all were telling me about constituent concerns, I wanted to make certain that we addressed it, and we did address it. And the administration did allow us to create positions to support that staff, that function, and then I hired people whose positions were vacant when I came. So the combination of both has allowed us to right-size the claims administration group. Those people are not lawyers. So for those of you who are not familiar, they're not lawyers. And that has allowed us to get people who are claims adjusters from Allstate and State Farm. They come in and they handle our processing of our claims.
So let me just say publicly that I appreciate your work. The department has done an enormous amount of work. This is something that has improved significantly, and I appreciate that is still reflected in this budget to be able to right size to make sure that we don't get a backlog that's hundreds of cases. So I appreciate that because it took attention, but it also took some resources. So I'm glad that that's the case. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
I'm good. I think I'm good. All the questions. Yeah.
All right. Very well. Anyone else? If no one has anything else, let me thank Law for coming in and presenting their budget. Appreciate your presentation. That's going to conclude today's seance. Tomorrow, we get to do this again, except we'll be starting at 9:30 instead of 10. We will start with APD, followed by Watershed. Then after lunch, it'll be AIM, and we will wrap up with Parks, maybe at 3:30 instead of 4. So we're going to be in recess until 9:30 tomorrow. Thank you.